Cyril, what a beauty! Hawthorne was...
I don't believe it! I see it, but I don't believe it! Claws with a capital C! How did he do it?
Leonberry, you star! Oh my goodness! Is this one to remember?
G'day community and welcome to the Jock Reynolds Supercoach podcast. I am Lekdog. Today I'm joined by Damo out in WA. How are you, Damo?
I'm good. It would be better if the Dockers knew how to play in wet weather, but we're not talking about real football this week.
Oh, we will be. Obviously, Damo, there's been lots of big news this week, a change of government. There's been Supercoach news galore, but I'd say the biggest piece of news coming out of the weekend would be our guest, Tim Michell, jumping on the podcast, the Supercoach guru from the Herald Sun. How are you, Timmy?
Oh, guys, it's always a delight when I get to jump on the Jock Reynolds podcast to join the iconic KFC Supercoach podcast. So awesome to be on. I know the guys from the official podcast said that they feel like they're being cheated on a bit this week, so I told them I was having a week off so I could come and join the Jock Reynolds podcast. And great to be on chatting to both of you lovely men and your fantastic Supercoach community as well.
It's exciting to have you on. It feels like a great time to have you on as well. Obviously, pretty soon we've got some DPP changes. You're the king of Supercoach dual position analysis, and we've got plenty of buy around
self-appointed
talk.
Self-appointed.
Oh, hey, I'm self-appointed Supercoach expert as well.
But it's going to be huge. You're right, mate. So after this round is the next round of DPP changes, and I know that the two names that most people are had on their watch list have been Marcus Bontempelli and Bailey Smith, and they both played a fair bit of forward time on the weekend against the Suns. So looking reasonably promising. I know we'll have the official stats up on the News Corp websites over the next couple of days to just give people an indication of how close those two and Max Gawn and a few of the other big names and big scorers are that are in contention for DPP. But hopefully people have been planning, because I think the biggest thing that we're going to see in the next couple of weeks is people trying to fit probably 7 or 8 guns into their forward lines, because Will Brodie's still playing well. If you've got Isaac Heaney, if you've got Luke Parker, all of a sudden you're trying to find room for potentially 4 or 5 Bulldogs alongside those guys.
No, it's certainly going to be tough. I know I've only got McRae and Dunkley in my side at the moment, and I'm basically at full build, despite my team still being terrible. But I will need to make some changes heading into the bye rounds. Let's get into the main part of the podcast. We're going to do our positives and negatives from the week. I'll kick things off with a positive, and I'm going to say, at risk of cursing him, it's Daniel Rich, who I sort of panic traded into my side a couple of weeks ago. I had the exact amount of money in the kitty to move Jordan Ridley to Daniel Rich, and since then he's gone 117, 93 and 127, which I'm very happy with. So another successful week on the Daniel Rich train. Damo, what's your positive from the last round?
Not a lot, to be honest. I think the best thing was Sam DeConing coming in, scoring 85 in place of Jordan Ridley, who was a late out with COVID protocols.
How good! All of a sudden, this big key position defender, we put him in our teams in round one, and we thought he might make a little bit of cash, but we just needed to fill a spot. Suddenly, he's like the best scoring rookie we have, Damo.
Well, he's got a 3-round average of almost 79 points, and he's still got a lot of money to make if he's going to continue to average around there. So he's definitely someone who we don't need to offload until Geelong's bye now.
Now, Timmy, how did you go? What's your positive from the round that has just been?
Pretty much bang on average, Lek. The big DC, Darcy Cameron, willed me to 2,300, which I know compared to a lot of people sounds pretty underwhelming, but that's about sort of where I'm sitting at the moment. I think I'm about 12 or 13K overall and have been stuck around there for at least a couple of weeks now. But yeah, really happy with Darcy Cameron. If I had to pick out one positive of the weekend, I think he was a slight concern going in as to when Craig McRae came out a couple of days from that Dockers game and said, no, we think Mason Cox is probably going to do most of the ruck work. I thought, oh, here we go. And then Damo sent me a photo of the monsoon over there in Perth as well on Sunday, and I thought, well, Darcy Cameron playing as a key forward is going to relish these conditions, isn't he, and probably drop a 20. But Mason Cox went down, I think, midway through the second quarter, and Darcy Cameron went into the middle and did all the rucking, although Tyler Brown did a little bit, but Darcy Cameron did 90% of it after that. Scored 130 despite a really tough matchup against Sean Darcy, and looks like he might reach 500k now. So if you got on Darcy Cameron, I know I urged most of the community to do so, and thankfully some did. I very rarely get things right, but looks like I've got one right in the case of Darcy Cameron, and I think he's going to get us through to his round 14 buy now. I'd probably look at trading him out about then, because I think that's when his price is just about going to top out, and Brodie Grundy will come back a few weeks after that. But he looks like he's probably going to make us 150k plus and scoring pretty well. So he was definitely one of my big positives from the weekend, with the others probably being the guys that are featuring a lot of teams, and I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed their scoring on the weekend. Like Will Brodie was super in the wet, which didn't really surprise anyone. It was like a sham wow over there, just cleaning up in the wet. Clayton Oliver, wasn't he just immense? I think it was a toss of the coin, well, a three-sided coin, if you want to put it that way, between sort of Petrarca, Gawn, and Oliver as to which way your captaincy went. And if you landed on Oliver, you would have been absolutely thrilled, because he was just monumental against North. And I think I tweeted on the weekend that all the Melbourne players had every right to put the Q in the rack in that game against North Melbourne. They would have won pretty convincingly regardless. And Clayton Oliver was relentless sort of until the final siren. So he was brilliant, scoring his 170. Unfortunately, didn't have him as captain, but at least had him in. And the other big win from the weekend, like Damo talks about Sam de Koning stepping up, was Sam Hayes coming in place of Braden Pruce for my team. So Pruce pulled out with illness, which affected a lot of people. Some teams had to rely on Hugh Dixon, which worked out okay. He's got about 50, but Sam Hayes was pretty good, scored 72, and that was a pretty decent result at R2, especially when some teams copped a 0 because Braden Pruce pulled out. So, props to Sam Hayes, and hopefully he can continue to make us a bit of cash in the next month or so.
I think Sam Hayes has been a great little addition to Supercoach teams out there. Braden Pruce, the question mark has always been health for him. So obviously he's missed a couple of games, and we've had a good, decent little bench cover there.
Definitely, mate. So no, we've got but looking at my negatives, and I know we're going to get stuck into them now. Had Max Gawn as captain again, so I've captained him 2 weeks in a row. Paid $670 for him, thinking he's going to monster the Eagles and he's going to monster North, and he scored 70 and close to 90 on the weekend, and has lost about 100k since I bought him already. So I've done you all a big favour if you held off on Max Gawn, because now you can wait until round 15 and probably bring him in for less than 550k. So that's going to be really pleasing if you get him at that price, especially if he has forward eligibility potentially as well after the next round of DPPs. And bought in Andy Brayshaw on the weekend as well, Damo, and his time on ground, he played, I think, less footy than Will Brodie on the weekend, which was pretty tough to watch. For those that got on Andy Brayshaw on the weekend, Damo, what was your sort of takeaway from that game as well, seeing him only play about 70% of time on ground? Was he unlucky, or was it down to conditions, or do you think he might be, carrying a bit of a knock?
I know in the North Melbourne game, he was crunched pretty hard by Jed Anderson at one point. So I think maybe there's like a sore rib issue or something there, but he's still ranked first for total tackles. He's still ranked third for tackles per game, and he's ranked 16th for effective disposals per game. So he's still getting the football and using it well. It's just he needs to stay on the ground longer to get his hands on the ball more. So he's really only had one score below 94, and even that game against Geelong where he did score that 77, he gave away 5 free kicks, so it could have been an easily 110 plus score if he didn't give away those free kicks. So I'm not worried about him. I think he's going to be okay for the run home, and people who have held off for this long are going to get him cheaper.
Well, I'll jump in here and let you know what my negative is, and it's Matt Rowell, who I do still have in my Supercoach side. I wanted him to sort of be in this team through the buys and then upgrade him as a stepping stone. I think the reason I'm so disappointed, apart from the fact that he scored 39, is that this is not a player I actually wanted in my team. You can go back and listen to our previews, our team previews, our preseason podcasts. It's just not someone I wanted. Dominated the preseason. I thought I'd mitigate the risk by jumping on him because he was in so many teams. Comes out, pumps out a 157 in round one. And then since then, really, let's be honest, he hasn't done anything. To have 6 disposals in a full match where you're playing midfield, I just don't think he's that good. I just don't think he's that good, and he's really disappointing as a Supercoach option. So I'm probably stuck with him through the buys as well, at least the first buy, because I got no one playing. So I'm just really disappointed that I even own him at this point, and I don't know what to do, fellas. I don't know what's become of him.
It's been a tough watch, hasn't it? I think I got off maybe about a month ago, but certainly hasn't. Like we were all buying him at the start of the year, thinking this guy might be our, I don't know, M7, M8 keeper, and not even getting close to that. And I think we're getting into that situation now with a lot of guys as well. Like the buys are on the horizon, so I've got Jake Bowie there that I somehow still have in my team, and I'm thinking, can he get me through to round 14? But he's losing a lot of cash, like Matthew Rowell as well. Everyone with Nick Martin's going to be in the same boat as well after his low score on the weekend. So, yeah, Damo, there's got a lot of big calls to be made over the next month on some rookies, and whether we're prepared to, I don't know, maybe lose $50,000 that we could just cash in now to potentially have that little bit of extra cover through the buys.
Yeah, I think people are weighing up whether they hold on to Nick Dacos or if they hold on to Nick Martin, and I think people are more likely to hold on to Nick Martin because of the potential dual position additions to the forward line and the potential cash that Nick Martin can hold on to. But there's clearly some tiring bodies out there, especially in these younger guys, and it's going to be interesting to see how people manage their teams through the buys and manage these trades heading into that period where it's going to be challenging to upgrade your team entirely.
Yeah, well, I know we're going to talk rookies, but we brought up Sam DeConning, and Paddy McCartan's the other one. He is scoring somewhere between 65 and 80 just about every single week for us. He's as reliable as we've got from a rookie this year. He can swing between our defence and our forward lines as well. He's got the same buy as Sam DeConning, I think the middle buy of the 3 in round 13, which is looking like a pretty tough round for a lot of us because most of us are loading up on Bulldogs now. So, which is unfortunately that round 13 buy as well. And I think Tuke Miller's off that round too. So, going to be plenty of big names missing. But like Paddy McCartan and Sam DeConning, they're 2 of my biggest head scratches at the moment because I think you'd probably get to round 13 and be happy to cash them in. But I feel like those 2 guys are just about locked in their teams and they could be really handy cover, not just through the buys, but during the run home as well. So, not only Nick Martin, but there's a lot of sort of key rookie calls to be made as well. Because if you're running low on trades and you're punting someone like Paddy McCartan, who knows, that 60 or 70 could come in really handy late in the season that if you had held on to him.
Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion. Do you hold guys beyond their maximum peak value if they're going to score for you off the bench? Because we look at, you bring in a Cooper Hamilton, right, on his bubble round, and then he gets dropped the next week for illness or whatever the cause is. A guy like Jack Carroll, he's probably not going to stick around in this Carlton team after a couple of down weeks. So is the 140, 200K, whatever it ends up being that you're going to make from these trades worth the potential cover that they'll offer you, as you said, through the back of the year? It's an interesting discussion piece, and I think most people are pretty close to full build with their teams. So I think there's definitely some value in holding these guys. But having said that, the scoring can turn around pretty quick, and they could start pumping out Nick Martin 49s every week pretty easily. So for me, number one thing is let's get through the buys. If they're going to help you, if they're going to play in your weakest round, which for me is round 12, which a guy like Sam DeConning and a guy like Paddy McCartan are, I'll absolutely hold them. But if I'm struggling to field the team in round 13, then maybe we do need to look at moving them on. It's a tough call. It's a line ball call, and it probably depends on if you're trying to win leagues or trying to go for total rank. Let's talk about some rookies, because this week, let's talk about rookies that people are going to be jumping off this week. So there's 3 major names that I think people will be moving on this week: Nick Martin, Nick Dacos, and Josh Gibcus. Damo, of those three, do you have any, and are you moving them on?
After I do my trades this week, I'll only have Nick Dacos.
So what's the reasoning behind moving on the other guys over a Nick Dacos?
Well, I can move Sam DeConning into my forward line, and I feel like he's pretty decent in my forward line, at least until his bye. But it allows me to move Nick Dacos to my D7 position. I feel like he's more likely to stay in that Collingwood team than Sam DeConing, even though I do think they've got good job security in the short term. But it allows me to bring someone in, complete my defense, and then move someone to my forward line and wait for those dual position players to come through at the end of next week.
I think that makes sense. Are you viewing it any differently, Tim, or is Nick Martin / Gibcus the guys you're looking at giving the flick?
Well, at 3/4 time in that Dreamtime game, I had Nick Martin traded out of my side, and then he came out and had 14 disposals and scored 30 plus in the last quarter. Like, he was unsighted up until that stage, unfortunately. So I don't know. I still feel like from what we've seen from him, and I know that round one performance is a long time ago now. We're talking, a couple of months ago, which is 8 lifetimes in KFC Supercoach world. But I still feel like he's a guy that could potentially be sort of a handy F7, M9 type of swing and potentially score some 80s or 90s for us. So I can understand the theory behind cashing him in. And I think the most popular trade this week is probably going to be Nick Martin out, as Damo said, trying to get one of Sam DeConning and Paddy McCartan into your forward line if you've got them in defence, and then bringing in Luke Cleary from the Bulldogs, who's on the bubble and has looked pretty good in his first couple of games. So he's got a nice negative break even. But I'm personally looking at Gibcus out this week, and I've still got Jake Bowie sitting there who's losing money and unfortunately getting ignored a fair bit when Stephen May and all of his senior teammates seem to wax the footy around in that defensive half. So only wanting to use 2 trades this week, I'll probably move Bowie and then Gibcus, who I think is break even sort of around 50 or 60. So he looks like he's just about made all the cash he's going to for us. He also has the round 12 bye, so I'm only going to get one more game out of him, and probably, hopefully, if I can use sort of 2 or 3 trades in round 13 and then round 14, you wouldn't think Josh Gibcus' score is going to be in your best 18 for either round 13 or round 14. So pretty comfortable with moving him on. I can totally understand why people would get rid of Nick Martin, but there's still part of me that, I don't know, wants to cop a $20,000 or $30,000 hit just to potentially have that little bit of extra cover, because I feel like he's easily inestimable, and we know he's been in Essendon's sort of best 3 or 5 players this year, and we know he's got a big score in him as well. So I'm not desperate to move him on, but at the same time, based on what we saw in the first 3 quarters of the Dreamtime game, I can totally understand why people are pretty keen to cash in. Now, Nick Dacos, I think I'll hold him until round 14 because I feel like he could be handy covering the buys. But then at the same time, we keep hearing talk of a rest that hasn't come yet. So maybe that'll come at the worst possible time in round 12 or 13.
Yeah, it's certainly ones to watch. I'm banking on Dacos sticking around for those buy rounds myself. Nick Martin, I'm probably content with moving on if I can find the right premium to upgrade him to this week, knowing that anyone we upgrade to is going to miss a game over the next sort of 4 weeks. So just something to remember. Damo, we're going to run through the people that we can look at trading in, and I'll just get you to give us a quick summary of each of these blokes and what you think their job security looks like. The first one that Tim mentioned before, Luke Cleary, aka Mitch Cleary, break-even negative 67, scored 75 on the weekend for the Bulldogs, projected to make 60K. Do we think he's a reasonable little option for us?
I think he is. Big watch on the Bulldogs team selection this week, though, because they do have a few players available again. So who knows if he sticks around. You'll hope he sticks around, and you might bring him in anyway, just as a cheap option who has a chance to come in at some stage, because he has looked mighty impressive. And you might remember late last year we did the draft pod, and I was very big on this guy being in Supercoach this year. So I'm hoping that he can continue with his role at the Bulldogs. He appears to be playing that intercepting role, and that might mean that they move someone like they've already moved Zane Cordy forward, but maybe Zane Cordy stays forward and Luke Cleary stays in the side with Keith and O'Brien down back.
There was a few other players that played their second game on the weekend that could be potential cash cows. Cooper Stevens, Tim from Geelong, scored 64, break even negative 57, 123k mid. Any reason to look at him at all?
No, job security just isn't there, Lek. I don't think he's going to make money fast enough. If you plan on, or you're happy to have him at M11 for the rest of the year, then potentially go there. But I think, as you said, like most coaches now are in a position where with having deployed a few boosts, they've probably got 7 or 8 midfielders in their team already. They've more than likely got Greg Clark there as well at maybe M8 or M9. And midfield spots in our teams are pretty limited. So Cooper Stevens, not one I'd be looking at, because even as good as he's been, there's a fair chance he'll be back in the VFL in a few weeks.
Might be a similar statement for this bloke, but another Bulldog on the bubble, Rhylee West, 187k. He's more expensive. Scored 79 on the weekend. Break even negative 41. Projected to go up about 40k. Is he someone that we think sticks around in that Bulldog side?
Yeah. I don't know, like, and the reason that, like, I've liked what I've seen from him, and I know Bevo was very positive post-match about Rhylee West's performance as well, but I think about how, like I spoke off the top almost about how we're going to be trying to fit all these different people into our forward lines in the next couple of weeks, and Rhylee West has only played a couple of games, so he's not going to be eligible for DPP in this latest round. You have to have played 6 games to be eligible for DPP at round 11. He's going to be forward only until at least round 18. And we're already going to be trying to fit 5-6 premiums into our team sort of pretty quickly over this bye period. So I just don't think the cash generation's potentially there with Rhylee West. But I think more than anything, like, are you really going to want to use one of those 8 forward spots, which are going to be sort of at an absolute premium on Rhylee West? I really can't see the sort of sense in devoting one to him.
And I spoke about the Bulldogs that could potentially return this week. They're talking about Tim English being potentially coming back in this week, but he has a few boxes to tick. Taylor Duray is also a chance. Jason Johannesson is in the mix as well, while Cody Waitman can make an early return from his broken collarbone potentially. So there's already 4 Bulldogs coming back that may push out the likes of your Buku Kamas, Luke Cleary, Rhylee West. Even your Robbie McComb might find himself find himself back in the VFL.
Damo, if Tim English doesn't play this week, I'll delete my team, because he has been sitting on my bench for 5 weeks, I think now. A 2 to 4 week hamstring morphed into, I think it's already been 5, and I need him to play against the Eagles. I don't care if he plays full forward and kicks a few goals. I just need to see him back out there. So please, Bevo, please, Tim English, be feeling better this week and get out there against the Eagles, because if you're in my position and you've held him for this long, he's been the most expensive donut I think I've had in my team apart from maybe round 23 last year when I lost Tom Stewart and Jack Siebel in the last round of the season.
It's been a long wait for the Tim English owners out there.
Like, it's one of those ones where, like, sense tells you in KFC Supercoach that when you get premiums in, and he's been, like, average-wise, far and away the best forward of this year, you don't trade them, especially when it's only sort of a potential 2-week injury. But, this has just been one of those really unfortunate ones where 2 weeks morphed into 4, and then illness hospitalised him, which was a bit scary, but sounds like he's on the mend, and I saw him back on the track in a few videos last week. So, yeah, fingers crossed he's back out there this week. And I think, depending on sort of what happens with because Jordan Sweet's been good in the last couple of weeks. Been thinking about for the wider community, and you know that with some bad trades and everything, I like to bring players' prices down, and I feel like this is going to happen with Tim English. He's going to play full forward. He'll score 60 or 70 in his first game back. He'll just be eased back into it, and then the wider community will get the benefit of jumping on him in round 14 at a nice, juicy price to sort of fill out their forward lines. So if that is the case, as well as his health, you're welcome to tweet me and say thank you for holding on to him and giving us Tim English at a nice cheap price.
Well, there's 3. Yeah, you go, Damo.
I was just going to say there's some other rookies that are on the bubble. Jesse Motlop and Sam Butler both played their second games for Carlton and Hawthorn, respectively. They're probably not players that we can look to. And Jacob Ware played his first game against West Coast on the weekend, up against Brisbane this weekend, and then he's on the bubble heading into round 13 because the Giants have the round 12 bye. So he's someone that people can put on their watch list for a potential rookie to bring in to facilitate those upgrades during the bye rounds.
Also someone that has had big raps on him, especially from a Supercoach perspective. We've been waiting for him to appear. And the final rookie that everyone is going to look to trade into their team this week is they're going to look at his score, 95 points on the weekend, $127,000 forward, Joel Jeffrey, break even -45. At the start of the year, he was in every bloody team that got posted on the website. Obviously hasn't played until round 9, but Damo, I don't think people can look at Joel Jeffrey as a realistic option, given it took him kicking 5 goals from 80% disposal efficiency to score 95 points.
He scores like a key forward. He doesn't play like a key forward, but he scores like a key forward. So there'll be some games where he does score 95s, and then there'll be other games where he scores 25s, like he did in his first game. He's not the sort of player that you can really bring in and have much confidence putting in on field. If you've got a spare bench spot and someone just sitting on your bench that you want to move on, sure, I guess, but I don't know about his job security at the Suns either.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at the highlights of that game. I had the enjoyment of watching the whole game. But if you look at the highlights, some of those goals, he's like kicking over his head and like, doing backflips, kicking it through. So I don't think he's going to be doing that every week. Gentlemen, let's look at some players that coaches out there can bring into their sides. I know we've got some players that are going to be really popular this week, as we've already touched on in Bontempelli and Bailey Smith. Tim, I believe you're looking very heavily at Bailey Smith this week.
Well, I got Bont on the weekend, Lek, and was pretty happy. I started with a 130 on debut, so that was a decent start. Just thought his price was too good to overlook with the possibility of DPP as well. I know last week his numbers were sitting the same as Baz's were last week at sort of 63% midfield and 37% forward, which is just over that 35% threshold that we look for. So that was encouraging enough for me to get the Bont in last week, and it'll allow me this week to. My defense is really light, so I probably should grab a defender, but at the same time, I'm looking at Bailey Smith and the fact that the Western Bulldogs play the Eagles this week, and Bailey Smith's break even's about 60 or 65, somewhere in that realms where he's likely to rise by 15 to 20,000 again this week. So if I get Bailey Smith in this week, I get him against the Eagles, I get him for 2 rounds before his bye, and fingers crossed I get forward line DPP eligibility after this round as well. So he's a big chance to come into my team this week. But if I had to choose between the two Bulldogs, I'd go with Bont this week. His record against the Eagles is just incredible. I think he's gone 140 plus in his last 2. And that was those performances were against West Coast teams that were, in most cases, finals contenders. And we know that the West Coast team this year is sort of one of the
Not that.
one of the worst performing sides. I'm trying to be respectful here, but sort of one of the worst sides we've seen out there in a long while, for a whole range of reasons, for any West Coast fans that are listening to the podcast. So I think Bont could go absolutely monstrous this week, and that's why I'd get him in ahead of Bailey Smith. But I think we're going to see both of those guys in a lot of teams come round 14 anyway after the Western Bulldogs bye.
I have asked this question to Damo many a time, so I'll ask you, how many Bulldogs is too many Bulldogs? At what point is my team too many Bulldogs? Because we talked about it last week. There might be a situation where if Bont and Smith get forward eligibility plus English plus Dunkley, people have got like five Bulldogs in their forward line alone.
Yeah, so they'll be my first 4, I think, in my forward line, and then next to Luke Parker and Will Brodie. And that's where the difficulty comes in that we're talking about. We're trying to have sort of 6, only limit your forward line to 6 options, because Will Brodie, there's absolutely no reason to trade him out. Like he's been just about the best buy in KFC Supercoach this year. I think a lot of teams, once Luke Parker's price went under 500k, jumped on him as well. So there's another forward line spot taken up. And I think the only benefit that might come from sort of potential DPP for Bontempelli and Bailey Smith is that it might mean that teams use their M7 or use their M8 for a mid-forward swing. And then if trades start to run a bit low later in the season, and say we lose one of those premium forwards to COVID isolation for a week, then you can swing the magnets around and maybe play Greg Clark or play one of your Ben Hobbs or one of your bench midfielders to cover a line for a week. So, I think it's going to benefit most KFC Supercoach teams. And I think DPP, apart from the fact that it's sort of given me something extra to write about, I think it's been one of the best things that we've done in a long while with the addition to KFC Supercoach, because it's brought a lot to the game, and it's going to bring us hopefully some big name DPPs next week.
No, it certainly is. It's a great initiative. It's a great innovation on the game. I personally am very excited to see, and I don't know that this is a fact, but I'm very excited to see Jaden Short have mid-defense eligibility. Give me some extra flexibility.
Yeah, he's close. I can tell you he's close. So, yeah, it's if Damien Hardwick does the right thing by us this week, I think we're a fair chance. And, look, that's probably one that doesn't affect all that many teams because most of us have already got Jaden Short, but it'd be nice to be able to, I don't know, potentially use him in your midfield. Say you're someone like, I've got P.O.D Ulan from the Gold Coast at M11. So if things did get really hairy in the run home and I had to use Jaden Short as a midfielder for some reason, it'd be nice to be able to have that option. So we'll find out after round 11, Lex. So, yeah, I'm sure in the next few days for people, depending on when they're listening to this podcast.
Damo, let's talk upgrades. Is there anyone catching your eye? I know on the Mailbag podcast, you and Clarkey talked about Brad Crouch, and then he came out and pumped out another 127. Do you have any other little gems for us, Damo?
Staying with St Kilda, Jack Sinclair is 530k. He's now got a break even of 67, so he only went up by 10k over the weekend. I didn't think he would move much from his price over the weekend, and that's why I aimed for him this week. And he's really only had one poor score for the whole year, two poor scores for the whole year, and they've been 83s and an 83 and an 85, which really isn't that bad. It really.
No, it feels real. Like there was a lot of hesitation early in the season. Obviously, a few people like Marto on jockreynolds.com.au spoke about Jack Sinclair before the season started as a real breakout option. Probably overlooked him a little myself heading into the season, and he's just not put a foot wrong, has he? He's just been a really impressive addition. And there's been all this talk about, all these players coming back into St Kilda's side. Billings is coming back. All these guys are coming back, but nothing seems to be stopping Sinclair's output.
No, absolutely. And he kind of feels like Aaron Hall a little bit from last year. I didn't jump on Aaron Hall from last year because I was scared of his injury history. But Jack Sinclair, he's not really had injury history. It's just been form that has let him down, and now he seems to have that settled role. I think he's taken the role that Nick Caulfield hasn't been able to take up due to the ACL injury. So who knows if it continues into next year, but it's nice to have him for the ride this year at the very least, and I think he's a great buy-in for this round at 530k.
No, it's certainly a good option. If I'm going to throw a pot out there, I'm just throwing this name out there. I'm not saying go out and sell the shop to get him, but Harry Perryman, I really like the look of. He, to me, is one of those perennial breakout guys who's never quite made it. 487k, 138 on the weekend, was in 50%. Actually, it was a little bit more than that of the CBAs, and over the last 4 weeks has gone 101, 93, 93, 138. So a bit more of that midfield role being assigned to him. Maybe that changes with Whitfield coming back in, but he's just like, if I'm suggesting someone who's in only 1,000 teams, Harry Perryman is that man this week.
I watched that game very closely, Lek, as someone that, and it's too long a story for the podcast, so it's not an agony aunt thing where you want to listen to me whinge about it for 15 minutes. But by virtue of missing one swap to send Paddy McCartan to defence last round, I ended up trading out Stephen Cornelio instead of Jake Bowie, which on the Sunday, I think it was, when he scored 37, I thought I was an absolute hero, and I thought, how good is this? And then I saw Stephen Cornelio play his best game in years against West Coast, and what do you have, 36 disposals at about 90% efficiency? Like, he was just awesome. But I think you make a really good point about Harry Perryman, because he's offsider at a lot of those CBAs and looked really impressive. So, yeah, maybe he's the guy that can take that sort of extra step with Mark McVeigh in charge at the Giants, and maybe add another 5 or 10 points. The other one from the Saints that I think stepped up, just analysing some of the games on the weekend, Damo, Jade Gresham went to 16 CBAs without Jack Steele there. So while Jack Sinclair maybe gained 5 or 10 points on top of what we see sort of from his average this year without Jack Steele there, we know that point distribution had to go somewhere. Jade Gresham was really the one that benefited from Jack Steele not being there in terms of his CBA numbers going up. So I still think if you want a bit of a pod, he's not exactly that because he was fairly cheap early in the season, but I still think he's a reasonable price at about 445k this week, and he's on the back of a couple of tons now as well. So the issue with trading in Saints is they play 1 week and then miss in round 12. But I think there's, as Damo said, there's good reason that Jack Sinclair, as at our time of recording, is the most traded in premium for this week.
What about if we ride on the Gold Coast Suns form? What about someone like David Swallow, averaging 114 over the last 3 weeks, 123 versus Sydney? Lekdog's reaction to that.
His chair.
101 versus Fremantle, 119 versus Western Bulldogs. This is a guy who, before his knees and ankle injuries, was a premium defender in Supercoach. Is he returning? Is he finally returning to this?
Is this pre-COVID times? I don't know.
This is like 2017 times, guys.
Wow, David Swallow. Lek. If you've seen Lek, he's just he's fallen off his chair. I don't mind it, Damo. Like I was trying to come up with a 3 trade scenario that somehow strengthened my team a couple of weeks ago, and I somehow landed across his name after he'd scored a 90 or 100 the week before, just because I had roughly around 350k to spend, and that's about what he was at that stage. Was never any sort of realistic chance of getting him, but he's shown some really good form in the last 3 weeks, and he's stepping up when someone like sort of Matt Riel has gone the other way, unfortunately, in the last few weeks. And even Tuke Miller scored 59 on the weekend too. So that would be a serious Uber pod move if you went there. I like Toby Green, who I think sort of post-buy in round 13 might be about 370, 380k. We know he's got a huge scoring ceiling, and the Giants take on North Melbourne after their round 12 bye too. So pretty keen to see Toby Green's role this week as well before he has the bye. So he spent a bit of time in midfield, probably still more in attack under the new coach there at the Giants. But I think he's one that could sort of be a pod with a big ceiling if someone's prepared to take the risk there as well. But there's not too many names really. I think most people have cottoned on to sort of who the popular buy should be at this stage of the season. But looking at those guys sort of 10% and under, the one that jumped out at me is, I don't think he'll be there for much longer, but the Bont is still only in 10% of teams. So if you're getting on him now, you're getting that little bit of extra benefit of other teams maybe being a few weeks behind the 8 ball on getting the Western Bulldogs skipper in.
Yeah, look, Bont he's one of those guys that averages 110 plus every year, and just is never in my team personally. I don't know why. I think it's just I've got McRae, I've got Dunkley, I've got English. I can't fit him in, but I think
get them all. This is the year, Lek. This is the year to
yes, the Bevo salad is actually helping us this year. Everyone's getting a little bit of dressing.
Trelaw, Cleary, who else? Bailey Dale. I reckon you could justify picking about 15 of them this year.
Yeah, the maths on that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. But hey, it's working so far. I think he's the pick of the litter this week. I'll be looking myself at Mark Blitzarves, by the way.
Before we wrap up, while we're talking primos, is Tom Michell back as a primo after what we saw on the weekend? He's under 500k for the first time since 2016, and he's got a round 14 bye. So I think his break-even's about 125, so we can afford to have another look at him. But there were some good signs down there in Tassie on the weekend.
He always plays well in Tassie, though. I personally wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
What's your thoughts behind that?
I don't think Sam Mitchell likes him very much. I think Sam Mitchell uses him as his plug and play. You're in defence, you're in the forward line, you're in the midfield kind of guy. I think because Tom Mitchell doesn't have the ability doesn't have the pace, doesn't have the athleticism, doesn't have the doesn't have something that Sam Mitchell wants in his midfielders, and I don't think Tom Mitchell's the kind of person that is going to play in the midfield every game that he is lining up for Hawthorn.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of interesting cases where preseason I thought he was the absolute lock of the midfield. I thought he was going to be a fantastic selection. Luckily, he had those question marks heading into round one, and I didn't pick him. But watching them, and he had a lot more CBAs on the weekend than previously in terms of total number, but the percentage was still down a little. Obviously, there was a hell of a lot of goals in that game, so percentage-wise, he still was in there a lot. But it's clear that Duke Newcomb is the man they want in there. They're getting Jaeger in there a lot more than they were earlier in the year. I'm with you. I'm not going near him, and it's unfortunate because he's going to be cheap and he's probably going to prove me wrong.
Well, why would you buy Tom Mitchell for $500K when you can buy Jack Sinclair for $530? You're getting the second scoring defender, or the second points total defender this year in Jack Sinclair for $30K more than a guy who is about the 20th ranked midfielder of the year. So I think that would be a pretty easy call to just find that extra 20 or 30K.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think obviously check the buys, but I think Sinclair and Bont are the two absolute number one targets for this week. Supercoaches at home. Gentlemen, let's wrap it up before my body shuts down from man flu. Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
No, it's been a lot of fun. We got through this long without talking about the fact that Carlton has gone ahead of Fremantle on the ladder as well. I normally just try and avoid Damo during Freo games because I know he's the number one Dockers supporter over there in the West. So, nice for Carlton. I just can't believe at the moment that we're sitting third on the ladder, game clear of fourth, 2 games clear of sixth. And my Supercoach team is putrid. I love giving out advice. I love writing about the game, and I swore I wouldn't do that much of it this year. I swore I was stepping back, but there's something about the game, there's something about KFC Supercoach just pulls us back in, and here I am on a podcast recording on a late into the evening, just because I love talking about the game and love talking to you blokes and love engaging with the community as well. So awesome to come on. Yeah, as you guys said, keep an eye out for sort of the DPP stuff over the next few days and sort of next week as we do some analysis as well. And hopefully we'll have some good news on Bontempelli and Bailey Smith and a few others next week for everyone.
No, thanks again. Thanks for all the work you do for the community, mate. Yes, I was about to say you've been very busy for a season where you took a step back. There's been a hell of a lot of content coming out of you, and we love it.
This is a step back by my standards. Let's just say that. I'm trying very hard. To maybe not be as engaged in a sense. I didn't pick George Hewitt at the start of the year, which normally I would watch George Hewitt score 120s every week and it would destroy my weekend because I think, how did I not pick this guy for 399K? But I've been able to at least pull back in that sense that I can watch George Hewitt score 120 and think, how good is this for Carlton, and not just invest all of my energy into my Supercoach team. So maybe a team going well, it does help in that sense that it gives you that little bit of extra footy focus, because Carlton has been so bad for so long that almost 99% of my energy has been invested into Supercoach, which is to your own detriment sometimes, but also because we got, like you blokes, got such a big passion for the game. So awesome to come on and have a chat.
Well, thanks for joining us. And Damo, thank you again for jumping on. You're always a vessel for information and discussion, and very much looking forward to the mailbag pod this week. Do you have any special guests lined up?
We have the man missing from this podcast.
The great Patch. That's a betrayal.
He's never going to... I feel like he's not going to forgive me for taking his spot this week. But and I also... I saw he said it a couple of days ago, don't say the E word to me. And I said Essendon. So I think I'm well and truly in the bad books this week. But hopefully we can win him back.
Yeah, well, hopefully... look, the only thing we need is Carlton to beat Essendon in 3 weeks' time or whenever that game is. Because...
Please.
If they beat us, we will never hear the end of it.
No, even if we win the premiership, we would not hear the end of that one.
No. But thank you, Damo. Thank you again. If there's anything you want to plug, do it now, you beautiful human.
Have any questions for the mailbag that you want Patch to answer, myself to answer, or even Clarky to answer? use the hashtag JockMailbag with your question, and we will answer the best ones.
Go Blues.